Imagine you decide to join uh, a local society for amateur astronomers.
Okay, sounds like fun.
Right. You walk in, and the energy is just incredible. I mean, everyone there just genuinely loves the stars.
Oh, yeah, pure enthusiasm.
Exactly. So you spend your weekends with these people, calibrating lenses, debating the life cycles of red dwarfs.
Stand out of those freezing fields at midnight,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. You are completely united by this shared, pure quest to understand the cosmos.
Sounds like a great group.
It is. But then, let's say 5 years later, you suggest pointing the telescope at a newly discovered constellation, and suddenly you are kicked out of the group.
Just completely exiled.
Yes, and the wild part is you weren't kicked out because the constellation doesn't exist. You're kicked out because looking at it means you bought the wrong brand of telescope.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe you didn't wear the official society jacket, or you asked a question that offended the club president.
It becomes a completely different organization at that point.
Right. It makes no sense.
Well, the focus shifts entirely away from what's actually in the sky. The priority just becomes who is allowed in the room, who has the most status.
Who's following all the unwritten rules?
Exactly. You started with this shared dedication to observing reality, and you ended up with a shared dress code and like an in-group loyalty test.
Which is completely baffling. I mean, if you think the entire point of the group was astronomy, that evolution makes zero sense.
No, it really doesn't seem to.
But today, for you listening, our mission on this deep dive is to explore exactly why that happens. We are looking at a genuinely brilliant and honestly slightly uncomfortable essay.
Yeah, it's a tough one to swallow.
It really is. It's called Belonging is Axiology by Elias Kunis. And just to clear up that title right away, axiology is the philosophical study of value.
Right. Essentially what a system or a person actually cares about deep down.
Exactly. So we're going to answer a question that has probably puzzled you if you've ever been part of a startup or a fandom or any subculture, really.
Well, it's everywhere.
Why do groups of incredibly smart, rational people seemingly inevitably start believing irrational, unscientific, or even mythological things?
It's just a pervasive phenomenon. And the essay offers this really powerful structural framework to understand it, called the SORT framework.
Let's get into that. What are the dimensions here?
So to set the stage, Kunis maps out how human groups navigate what they value along two primary dimensions. The first one is the S-axis.
S for sovereignty.
Yeah, sovereignty, or let's just call it the belonging axis. On one end of this spectrum, you have total isolated individualism.
Okay, like a lone wolf.
Right. And on the other end, you have deep collective communion, like complete belonging to a tribe.
Got it. And the second dimension?
That's the R-axis, or the reality axis. This ranges from pure myth, storytelling, and social narrative on one side.
All the way to the other side.
All the way to hard, empirical, objective truth on the other.
Okay, so here's the core premise that we're testing today. You might think you value the truth above all else,
Most of us do think that.
Yeah. Right. You might think your group is all the way over on the empirical side of that reality axis. But according to this essay, for most humans, belonging is the ultimate terminal goal.
Yes. Truth is just an instrumental tool we use to get that belonging.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the essay's boldest claim is that almost every group inevitably drifts away from facts and towards mythology.
That's the core argument, yeah.
How does a group that explicitly forms to find the truth end up abandoning it?
Well, the author argues that communities that loudly proclaim their dedication to empirical truth, what he calls high reality, or R+ communities.
The one saying, we are all about the facts.
Exactly. They're almost always just belonging-driven communities wearing truth-seeking clothing.
Wait, really? Wearing truth-seeking clothing?
Yeah, their commitment to rationality isn't actually their core function. It's just their founding mythology.
So all the rigorous methodology they use to debate or analyze data.
It's simply a coordination ritual. It's a way for them to feel like a unified tribe.
I am struggling to accept that as a universal rule. I mean, surely there are spaces built purely on the pursuit of facts, regardless of anyone's feelings.
You would think so.
Right. I'm thinking of spaces specifically designed to be temples of logic, like online rationalist forums, or the absolute pinnacle of this modern academia.
Academia is a great example.
Are you telling me a university physics department is just a belonging cult in a lab coat?
Well, the essay specifically points to those exact examples to illustrate this universal drift.
Really? The rationalist forums?
Oh, especially those. Let's look at the online rationalist community, like Less Wrong. These were forms that sprung up with the explicit stated goal of using probability and cognitive science to overcome human bias.
The entire premise was basically, let's be more rational than the general public.
Exactly. But over time, the culture inside those spaces morphed.
Ah, I see where this is going. They developed, like, approved ways of phrasing things.
Yes, and canonical texts you had to reference, plus incredibly dense jargon.
And while jargon might start as a way to communicate complex ideas efficiently, it often morphs into a loyalty marker, doesn't it?
Precisely that. You have to speak the convoluted language to prove you are an insider. And to explain how this happens, the essay introduces a mechanism called evaporative cooling.
Evaporative cooling, like how sweating cools down the human body.
The exact same physical principle, just applied to human sociology.
Okay, break that down for me.
So in physics, evaporative cooling works because the most energetic, hottest molecules escape a liquid,
Right, leaving the cooler, slower molecules behind.
which lowers the overall temperature. Now, in a community, the hot molecules are the genuine truth seekers.
The people constantly poking holes in things.
Yeah, the ones with really high epistemic standards who will relentlessly question a core concept if the data doesn't add up.
And that relentless questioning creates social friction.
A massive amount of friction. Eventually, the group starts finding these people annoying or disruptive.
Or insufficiently loyal to the community's established jargon.
Exactly.
Mm.
So the genuine truth seekers evaporate.
Yeah.
They get exhausted by the social politics and they just leave.
Wow. So who gets left behind?
The cool, calm conformists. The people who value their membership in the community way more than they value challenging the consensus.
So the group's epistemic temperature plummets.
Precisely.
And you can see that exact evaporative cooling in academia, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, the founding ideal of peer review was pure adversarial falsification.
You put your idea out there, and someone tries to tear it down with empirical facts.
All right, so the whole field gets closer to the truth, but it evolved into a social game. It became about citation networks, maintaining paradigm loyalty.
And protecting career incentives. Absolutely. The essay notes that the replication crisis in science is a perfect symptom of this.
Where huge numbers of published studies just cannot be reproduced.
Yeah. And the structural disease there isn't that scientists suddenly forgot how to do math.
Obviously not.
The disease is that academic journals select for publishable, exciting results rather than accurate ones.
And university departments select for collegial researchers.
Right. People who play nice with the established hierarchy and cite the right people, rather than researchers who are strictly correct but disruptive to the department's harmony.
It even happens in subcultures that are completely divorced from intellectual pursuits. Look at the punk rock movement.
Oh, that's a brilliant example.
The entire genesis of punk was the rejection of mainstream conformity. It was about raw, unfiltered authenticity and anti-establishment chaos.
But within a few years, it became its own incredibly strict, rigid conformity.
Exactly. You had people aggressively policing posers based on whether they listened to the exact right bands, or had the correct haircut, or wore the right patches.
The authenticity of a punk was judged by their adherence to the tribe's mythology, not by their actual independent thought.
It's wild. Now, the standard explanations for this kind of drift across all these different groups usually point to individual human flaws.
Like blaming it on laziness.
Right. Or we say the social pressure was simply too high. Or maybe financial incentives corrupted the original vision.
But what's fascinating here is that the author flips that entire assumption on its head. Kunis argues this drift isn't a failure at all.
Not a failure.
No, it is a massive structural success.
A success. Abandoning objective reality to police someone's jacket patches is a success.
It is, because the group achieved its actual hidden objective, belonging.
Oh, wow.
They were never a purely truth-seeking entity corrupted by human nature. They were a highly successful belonging-seeking entity that merely used truth-seeking as their initial excuse to gather in the same room.
That brings up a fundamental contradiction that I think we need to resolve. Why are truth and belonging at odds in the first place?
It's a great question.
I mean, why can't a group of people just care deeply for one another, belong to a tight-knit community, and simultaneously accurately observe reality?
To understand the conflict, we have to look at the structural mechanics of how groups function. Belonging requires synchronization.
Moving and thinking together.
Exactly. For a tribe to survive, coordinate, and act as a unified whole, everyone needs to essentially operate on the exact same baseline assumptions. Coordination demands low entropy.
And reality refuses to cooperate with them.
Completely refuses. Reality is inherently high entropy. It is chaotic, it is messy, and it is constantly changing.
So every single time you introduce new empirical data into a group, it threatens to fragment the consensus.
Yes. If you and I are completely synchronized today, but tomorrow I update my worldview based on a new piece of evidence, and you don't.
We are no longer synchronized.
Right. Our bond is threatened. Therefore, to keep the group perfectly together, the variance generated by constantly seeking the truth must be suppressed.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The essay brings in a concept from evolutionary biology called costly signaling to explain how we enforce this synchronization.
Yes, costly signaling is key here.
Let's say we're in a group and someone stands up and announces, "The sky is blue." If you nod and agree, you haven't actually proven any loyalty to that person or the tribe. You've just proven that your optic nerves function.
Right. Any rational, independent actor would agree with that statement, whether they are your absolute best friend or your sworn enemy.
So the underlying logic there is that truth is a terrible loyalty signal.
Exactly. Anyone can agree with the truth because the truth is self-evident. To genuinely prove your loyalty to a group, you have to agree with an absurdity.
Okay, give me an example.
If the leader of your group points up and says, "The sky is neon green," and you enthusiastically agree, you are doing something incredibly significant.
You are intentionally burning your epistemic capital.
Yes. You are making yourself look completely insane to every single person outside the group.
And that incurred cost is the whole point.
By looking at absurd to the outside world, you prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you value your standing inside the tribe more than you value your connection to objective reality.
Because you have nowhere else to go now.
Exactly, you burned your bridges. This mechanism perfectly explains the trajectory of extreme groups.
It explains why cults don't moderate over time. They inevitably adopt increasingly bizarre dogma.
And why political tribes continually push towards more extreme purity tests.
The more absurd the belief you're willing to swallow and publicly defend, the stronger the social bond you demonstrate to your peers.
And the genuine truth seekers either naturally self-deport or get excommunicated because they refuse to pay that social cost.
This completely redefines our standard concept of a heretic.
It really does. Usually we imagine a heretic as someone spreading dangerous lies that anger the righteous majority.
But the essay's structural definition is much sharper. Heresy is information that is objectively true, but socially disintegrating.
That is a fascinating distinction. The tribe isn't attacking the heretic because the heretic has the facts wrong.
No. In many cases, the inner circle of the tribe knows full well that the heretic is holding an accurate spreadsheet.
They attack the heretic because the heretic is committing treason against the group's cohesion.
By speaking a truth that shatters the established common knowledge.
Right. The heretic becomes a structural danger to the belonging of everyone else.
So when you see a mob go after a whistleblower with intense, visceral emotion, that anger isn't about epistemics or facts.
Not at all. It is a defense mechanism to protect the structural integrity of the community.
I have to say, if our default human setting is to sacrifice the truth just so we aren't kicked out of the cave, how has human civilization survived?
It's a very fair question.
I mean, if a tribe collectively decides to adopt the absurd, loyalty-proving belief that a local poisonous snake is actually harmless and its bites are blessings.
They were going to die in their very first encounter with the wildlife.
Right. From a purely logical, evolutionary standpoint, prioritizing a comfortable myth over physical reality seems like a brutally maladaptive failure. We should not be here.
To resolve that, the author performs what he calls the terminal value audit.
What's that?
We have to observe the revealed preference test. When a person's values conflict, what do they actually sacrifice in the real world?
When the evidence threatens their tribe, highly intelligent people generally don't say, "Oh, look, undeniable facts. Let me abandon my family and burn my career."
Exactly. Instead, they use their massive intellects to engage in sophisticated, motivated reasoning.
They find incredibly clever ways to attack the methodology of the evidence to protect their social standing.
But to address your point about survival, how do we get away with this without dying out?
Yes, please explain that.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the essay introduces the aliveness frame. Whether drifting into myth is deadly or adaptive depends entirely on the environment.
Okay.
Specifically, it depends on whether the group is operating in an environment of scarcity or an environment of abundance.
Well, let's explore that switch, because this feels like the key to everything.
It is. In an environment of absolute scarcity, nature acts as a ruthless editor. The environment forces truth.
Right. If your tribe adopts the shared mythology that a brightly colored poisonous berry is a sacred, nutritious food.
And you eat it to prove your loyalty.
Biological reality provides immediate, inescapable feedback. You die.
Exactly. In a harsh survival scenario, you are strictly tethered to empirical reality. You cannot afford false beliefs because the cost is paid instantly in human lives.
But once human ingenuity masters that environment, we enter abundance.
And in abundance, the feedback loop breaks. Drifting toward myth becomes entirely possible because you can believe false things for a very long time before the physical consequences arrive.
Myth becomes cheap.
Yes, you can afford to be completely wrong without starving or freezing, at least for the time being.
Which brings us to one of the most brilliant concepts in the essay, the axiological Malthusian trap.
It's a great term.
Just as the economist Thomas Malthus observed that human populations will grow until they exhaust their food supply, this essay argues that human beliefs follow a similar trap.
Right, this drift toward mythology is essentially a luxury belief.
A civilization is afforded this drift specifically because of its surplus. In a deeply ironic twist, civilizations drift toward irrational myths because their past successes removed the harsh environmental checks.
Their past mastery of science and reality is what allows them to stop being accurate in the first place.
That is wild.
It is the predictable, systemic consequence of having enough surplus that you can afford to be wrong. When physical survival is guaranteed by the infrastructure built by previous generations, your optimization shifts.
You stop optimizing for surviving the elements.
And you start optimizing for surviving your peers?
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, if you genuinely want to find the truth, if you want to explore reality with a group of people at your job or in your community, are you just doomed?
It sounds bleak, I know.
Are you destined to watch every group you join inevitably devolve into a loyalty cult the moment society gets comfortable enough?
There is hope, but it requires an engineering solution. The essay argues that collective truth-seeking is possible, but it cannot be achieved through the warm, belonging-driven mechanics of communion.
So relying on good vibes won't work.
No. It can only be achieved through what the author calls protocol, or the organizational skeleton structure of a group.
Let me see if I can translate that. Are you saying that collective truth-seeking works best when it functions less like a warm group of friends sitting around a campfire sharing feelings?
And more like a strict, cold, impersonal legal courtroom. Yes, that is the exact architecture required.
Wow, okay.
Think about the scientific method itself. It is a protocol. It isn't a suggestion. It's a structural rule book.
It relies on public hypotheses, so you cannot hide your claims.
It demands reproducible experiments, so anyone, anywhere, can check your work.
Yeah.
It mandates adversarial peer review.
It essentially creates an arena where your personal feelings and your desire to be liked completely cease to matter.
The protocol makes truth-seeking incentive compatible, regardless of the social bonds. You can absolutely despise the person who just disproved your pet theory.
You might want them exiled from your social circle.
But the structure of the scientific protocol forces you to engage with their evidence anyway. The Republic of Science was designed to be a legal architecture, not a social club.
And when science fails, like with the citation cartels or the replication crisis we mentioned.
It's not because the scientists suddenly lost their personal virtue.
Right. It's because the tribal desire for communion managed to override the cold, hard protocol. It's an architectural failure, not a moral one.
To bring this down to a highly relatable everyday level, the essay uses a perfect example of navigating this exact tension: the compliment sandwich.
Oh, the classic corporate management maneuver.
You know it well.
Oh, yeah. You start with a hollow compliment, you deliver the harsh critique you actually want to give, and you end with another compliment to soften the blow. I know a lot of people who prioritize raw truth find the compliment sandwich incredibly manipulative, or at least a huge waste of time. Why not just give the feedback directly and efficiently?
Because the compliment sandwich is an essential act of protocol translation. Remember our two axes.
Belonging and reality.
Right. You are trying to deliver hard, empirical reality to a person whose brain is primarily optimizing for belonging.
Ah.
If you just walk up and deliver a blunt factual critique, they do not process it as useful information. They process it strictly as a relational threat.
They hear, you are attacking me, which means you don't like me, which means I might be fired or exiled from the tribe.
Yes, the actual data regarding how they can improve their spreadsheet never even reaches their evaluation circuits. They are in full defense mode.
Right, so the reassurance wrapper, the compliments, acts as necessary bandwidth overhead.
Exactly. You are explicitly signaling, I am not severing our social bond. You still belong here.
Only once that tribal security is firmly established can the actual informational critique pass through the channel and be heard.
It isn't deception. It is the structural requirement for transmitting reality across different human operating systems.
That is wildly illuminating. It reframes so many frustrating interactions I've had.
It really makes you rethink how you communicate.
It really does. It comes down to this core trade-off that you, the listener, have to constantly navigate in your own life. You are always choosing between two states.
Herd warmth or scout clarity.
Right. On one hand, you have herd warmth. This gives you seamless coordination, collective action, deep shared meaning, and immense psychological stability.
Sounds pretty good.
It does. But on the other hand, you have scout clarity. This gives you accurate models of reality, novel insights, and independence, but it almost always brings isolation and friction.
And you simply cannot maximize both at the same time.
No. This raises an important question for everyone listening to audit their own communities.
Yes, look closely at the spaces where you spend your time, whether online or in person.
If asking genuine empirical questions triggers social punishment regardless of the evidence,
Or if there are, everyone knows, claims that act as unexamined loyalty tests.
you might not be in a truth-seeking community at all. You might just be in a belonging community wearing a lab coat.
A very good thing to watch out for.
And that leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to mull over. We discussed how abundance inherently breeds mythological thinking because we have the physical surplus to afford to be wrong.
Right, the Malthusian trap of beliefs.
If that is a structural law of human civilization, does that mean humanity's greatest periods of scientific and technological discovery are always, inevitably, destined to be followed by eras of deep superstition and tribalism?
It's a haunting pattern to consider.
And if you look out at the modern world with all of our incredible comforts and bizarre cultural battles, which era are you living in right now? Think about that the next time you look through the telescope.